Hello and welcome to the In the Trenches podcast. I'm your host, Lenny Teller, along with our other co-host, Ernest Nooks. And it has been a beautiful Monday here in Stephenville. I'm getting mixed up. We usually do this on Saturday, but here we are on a Monday after a whole weekend of reading, and we're still not done through tonight's topic. So we're breaking it up into two parts for our lovely listeners. So you'll get one this week and one next week. How are you tonight, Ernest?
I'm pretty good. I mean, my head hurts from reading this, but it's we make ourselves suffer so that others who listen to this podcast do not have to.
That is correct.
I'm going to start off by saying that this is probably the biggest cluster that I've seen of municipal planning in a while.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it there's so many things here that don't make sense, and I mean we're gonna kind of talk about them tonight and in the next episode. But I mean, like, there's so many things here that could just be addressed with simple changes in the Municipalities Act, which I have to tell everyone is about 20 plus years old. It's the oldest legislation in Canada, well, local, in terms of municipal affairs and that. So I mean, it's the oldest in the country, and I mean that's very typically Newfoundland, isn't it? I mean, like, we're very outdated in a lot of things, especially in terms of legislation, um, and more so than ever in the municipal realm. Um, you know, they're saying that the MNL group, or the joint working group, I should say, on regionalization, um, made the recommendations based on the following guiding principles. I'm reading it right from the pages of the report, um, and I think probably we should put this up on our Facebook page once we get our Facebook page up and running. Just so people can follow along with us, or even on our YouTube link to this as well. So people can actually look at this report, because I mean it's not very big, but it is a lot to take in. And the recommended approach is based on the following wonderful guiding principles: the provision of good local government for all residents, better and more efficient local services, more transparent and accountable local government, greater cooperation, equitable taxation, enhanced municipal administration, integrated planning, and the last but certainly not least, potentially achieving regional economic development. I How do you feel about this so far? Like looking through what you've seen.
Oh boy, it's. I will start off by saying it is one of the better written documents I've seen in terms of releases in many, many years. It does say a lot in a short frame, but at the same time, I'm a results-oriented guy, and I like measurements. I like to see how we measure things. So I guess how do we gauge greater cooperation? How do we gauge if they're more transparent and accountable? How do you gauge if the services are more efficient and better? How do you engage if your municipal administration is more enhanced? To me, that just sounds like more municipal administration. Um, in regional economic development, we already currently have in terms of spin-off in some sense of the way. So I'm not sure what they're trying to get there. And the provision of good local government for all residents. I would assume, and I would like to think, that most local governments are good and they do well and they mean well by what they do. And then there's some people who don't want any government structure at all. And we have a lot of that in this area. They don't care for government They don't want to be governed by anything. They just want to live off their land and do what they want to do. And this report is more of a big fuck you to those guys. Give me your money.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what this is all about in the short term. Now, I understand there are municipalities that have major issues, but I don't think the answer to fixing those municipalities is to create a board similar to Western Waste Management, where you regionalize a service of garbage collection and the price skyrockets and it's even more expensive for the municipality as a whole, and you're trying to control those prices, it makes it harder. The answer to those places who can no longer afford to keep their pipes going and their water running and their sewer and provide good governance or get enough people to run is amalgamating with the nearest town that can do that, but let them keep their name.
Yep. I'm sorry?
No, that's my take. That was a lot in a short time. I'm sorry.
No. And I agree with you there. And the other thing is, like, that's something that I've said to you kind of off camera too, is my concerns about the costs of this. Mm-hmm. Are my taxes going to go up? Is the services here going to be, I guess, not so frequent here because as a result of having a larger regional area, is there going to be kind of I guess kind of a lapse in service temporarily as they transition to a new kind of setup? Is there going to be things that, say, for example, the town of Stephenville, we can only really use Stephenville as our example. I mean, it's the one so for the sake of the discussion, we're going to be mostly basing this off our local area because we're most familiar with it. So, I mean, the other thing here as well is if we're going to be dividing things up, and investing in kind of a regional development model, like, does that mean that my community and my tax dollars are going to be going to, say, for example, I don't know, Campbell's Creek? I don't know how big the regions are going to be, but let's just say, like, is it going to go there? Is it going to go to the town of Cape St. George? Is it, and how much of it? Is that something that my community could have taken and done better, and it's just sent out that way for the sake of equity, and where it may or may not work? I don't really know how I feel about putting more of my tax dollars towards improving areas that have not invested their own resources into modernizing and updating their infrastructure. I really don't know how I feel about that. Now, there is a problem with the LSDs and the UIAs, the unincorporated areas. Do I like that there's people living out in the sticks, as it were, in the rural parts of this province, not paying property taxes, not contributing the proper share towards services and infrastructure? Yeah, that bothers me. I have an issue with that. But I don't believe that just slapping regions together is going to be the solution to that. If anything, it may facilitate, at least initially, kind of an economic flight, or because people with means, a lot of people move out to the rural areas and they have decent jobs. There's a lot of guys who do fly and fly from Alberta. They live out in the rural areas. Why? Because there's no one breathing down their necks looking for their money. And if we start regionalizing these areas right off the bat, and the taxes suddenly shoot up, these guys who have the money, they have the means, they might just say, you know what? I don't have to live here anymore. What's the point of this? I'm just going to sell off and I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to find an area with lower taxes. And they will, and they have that mobility. We a lot of people in Stephenville or in Kippens or the places, they might not have that mobility. So we
Mhm.
can't just go. And once these people move, that proposed revenue that the government is looking to kind of help balance the scales, or as they say, the achieve the what was it, scales of economy.
Mhm.
Um, that's not going to be there. So the burden is going to be further increased on us. The other thing I have to say is they don't seem like, I mean, like they're targeting the LSDs and the UIAs primarily. This is mainly what the regionalization is about, I think.
Mhm.
It's about those, and it's about the really small communities who just can't get a quorum together. Like Port East. Port has had lots of trouble getting candidates. Um, Now, I think that has something to do with the fact that it's an unpaid volunteer council as opposed to a paid one, like in Stephenville.
Mhm.
Like that has a big role on it. If you said we're going to pay, I don't know, $200 a month for 5 counselors or every like $200 every 2 meetings or something like that. I don't know, some setup like that, where we would have that, and you would have to do all your council duties. You wouldn't have a problem getting counselors because people want to get some kind of reimbursement for that. Because, as you know, being a counselor is a full-time job.
Yes, it
It's
is.
it's a lot of work. It's a lot of there's a lot of rewards, but there's also a lot of headaches.
Yeah.
So the financial aspect, while not the reason we want to get involved in politics, it helps make it easier. It helps make up for that kind of work that we have to do. So I think that the government is not looking initially, they're not looking too far ahead or too close to home, kind of saying like, what is the issues here? How can we address the existing problems as they are without going towards a next step?
Right. Yeah, and you're absolutely right in terms of attacking well, not attacking, but focusing, I guess, on the LSDs and the UIAs, because there is a provision in here of a recommendation that was made to leave most municipalities in Labrador's Indigenous communities in the urban core of Northwest Avalon, large rural municipalities with more than 11,000 residents.
Yes.
So they've made it quite clear, and they were smart to use the word urban and not rural, which could only mean you're basically talking about the city of Corner.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And there's certain MHA from Corner Brook who will love that. But I mean, you also have in here, like most regions will encompass a population range of 5,000 to 50,000. Provisional boundaries will be developed. Representation, including number of seats, wards, and decision-making process, will be determined by a provisional regional advisory committee. Then it goes on to say about a transition, and there's 3 phases. The provincial government should provide financial support. But what's funny is, and what they're talking about, and what they can do is they're basically taking all the work away from a municipality.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. And I'm trying to find what I read, but it talked about bylaw services and land use agreements and economic development, and this is everything that it would do, is everything that a municipality does now. So instead of doing this, creating an extra facet, which they seem to be stuck on, is creating another level. Why not do the hard work and get out there and say, this is the benefits to being a regional municipality? Shake the 30 municipalities on the Bay St. George and Bay St. George. You need to come together as one. You all need to be in on this together. And we need your vote of confidence on this. And this is the benefits, and this is what reaps the rewards. And we say what I've been saying for a long, long time. I used to call it the city of Bay St. George. I think we changed that to the regional municipality of Bay St. George and follow a model similar to the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo. There is no regional municipality of Wood Buffalo. Then you got to deal with this government, this government, this government, this government, this government. Take all the local service districts, the UIAs, the municipality, convince them somehow to amalgamate into one, call it the Regional Municipality of Bay St. George. You have a ward system on that. You have all full-time councillors if need be, or part-time / full-time, a full-time mayor. You increase the town staff, and that'll give you your power to go to the provincial government. Right now, all this does is add an extra layer of red tape that's going to make it even harder for the electorate to follow.
Yeah. It's a very, very confusing system.
Yes.
I think you might be talking about page 9 is where it might be when it talks about the LSDs and things like that. But and I see what you mean there, and that's a more diplomatic approach. But the problem is that this report, before it was put out to the public, had to be looked over by a government minister, and the government minister kind of said, "Listen, now I'm just assuming, they said, listen, maybe we shouldn't make it seem like we're being too forceful. Maybe we shouldn't look like we're being the aggressive ones here on this. So let's try to let these communities know that they can be autonomous, they can retain their identities, they can be independent, and yet still somehow function under this regional model." And that's kind of like the way Newfoundland does things. I find that's a huge problem with this province. We're never firm on things. It's kind of like this kind of middle of the road. We want everyone to walk away happy, kind of a thing, and that doesn't always work,
right?
But what bothers me, like I said earlier, is the fact that the legislation is old. We were mad about the LSDs not being able to, that they don't collect taxes. Well, okay, that's a good point. Let us change Municipalities Act. Let us enable these groups, these LSDs, to collect tax revenue. Let them have an economic development plan, or at least let us give them grants to develop an economic plan. Let's give them these powers. Let's just give them the powers, and also eliminate the UIAs, make them into LSDs, or just say, you know what, this whole thing is not working. We need you. We're going to incorporate you as a community.
Right.
If you don't like it, you can form an LSD. Either way, you're getting taxed. You're contributing to the upkeep of your area. You're contributing to the development. The other thing that I'm wondering here about LSDs and UIAs is, what is the per capita income of people residing in these areas as opposed to the municipalities?
Right.
Because there is only 6.5% of the population live in the LSDs. That's when there's 172 of them, which I think is kind of it's pretty big, and there's only 2 of those LSDs that have a population of more than 1,000 people. There's really not a need for 172 of these things. That just seems complicated and messy. But the thing is that we need to find out certain things for the LSDs and UIAs in order to really kind of better create a regional kind of plan. I think, what is the income of the per capita income of the people in the LSDs and UIAs? What is the average age? What is their average home value? What is their employment status? Things like that. These are important questions that we need to know, because the way the government keeps saying this is, the UIAs and LSDs, they don't pay property taxes. They don't pay their tax like you all do. how much money is the government losing from this? Really, you know, because it's based, property taxes is based on what is done to your house, and things like that. So what is the value of these homes out that way? Why don't they tell us these numbers? That's something that we as a public should know, the average home value of these houses. And that would probably help us influence the decision. That would make me feel a little bit more comfortable in taking, say, for example, Colebrook or Knowles Pond.
Right.
I would feel more comfortable in, because you know what, I'd say, listen, they're not like little tiny one bedroom houses. They're bigger kind of places, kind of like the Point of Mall, Like if we were going to take over Point of Mall, I'd be fine with that, because there's actually some really nice houses out there.
Right.
Out on Point of Mall and Fox Island River. So the property taxes from those would be not insignificant. So
And
so so yep.
and I guess this. I'm sorry to cut you off there. I'll read
No,
the
no, no,
points I was talking about in a second. It's on page 5. There's just so much yellow there that I was having a hard time seeing it. It would be very interesting. So I'll start reading this. So I'll point out this point first, because we're on the topic of LSDs and UIAs. Regional bodies will be given taxation authority for properties in former LSDs and UIAs. So, excuse me. So, the creation of the regional board, the regional council, will now eliminate LSDs and UIAs and put them under this regional governance structure.
Yep.
They will be given the ability, they will be given taxation authority for properties and charge user fees for services provided to municipalities. This tells me, and there's going to be some people that live in urban Newfoundland and live in Stephenville who say, too bad, so sad, screw you about what you're going to say, and cry me a river. There are people of low income. There are people of medium income who live on acres and acres and acres of family land passed down through generation to generation to generation.
Yep.
Who for years have not paid anything. They bought this land, they owned it outright. They own it. No taxes. For some of them to have to pay a property tax on that land based on a mill rate could do one of two things: bankrupt them or force them to move, because they won't be able to afford the property tax, which is a scary thought. And it might be part of the plan that this Liberal government seems to have about getting rid of rural Newfoundland, because rural Newfoundland does not vote Liberal anymore. Bit of a conspiracy theory, but some food for thought. That I'm just thinking of the land that my parents own. That would be a lot of taxes per year based on the current mill rate, depending on what it is set at by this regional board.
And now I'd say this, like, I think that a regional board would probably set it at a higher rate than you would have in Stephenville, because
which is scary,
you have
because then it's higher and harder to pay.
Yes, and you know what that will do also? That will necessitate flight. People are going to say, you know what? Screw this. I'm not paying this large amount of money. I'm going to sell what I can, and I'm getting out of here.
Yep.
So they're going to sell it, and they're going to go somewhere else. And you know what they're going to do based on experience? They're probably going to get a smaller dwelling, and they'll pay even less taxes. So really, while in the initial run, the regional governments are going to reap a windfall, at least on paper, the long run, it's going to actually discourage economic development, because there is no grace period. There is no time for people to kind of get things in order. I mean, essentially they're saying it's within 3 years we're going to do this,
Right.
but we really don't know how that's going to come down. We don't like these decisions are not going to be made really at beginning by local people. This is going to be people from these different government and kind of related bodies, MNL and MPA and PMA and them, they're going to come on in and kind of guide everything. This isn't going to be like some kind of, I don't know, writing of the U.S. Constitution situation where a bunch of local people get together, sit in a room and be like, okay, we have to develop this we have to develop the regional government. We are the people who know what the situation on the ground is. So we should be the ones to design it. But it's not. It's going to be in comes, John Jeffrey from St. John's, with his Memorial University degree, or probably, I don't know, from St. Mary's or something like that, some fancy degree. And he would just say, okay, I understand you have all these concerns. That's not the point. I'm here to make sure you guys get the bare minimum set forth by this working group. So here it is. This is what you're going to do. Sign here. If you don't do that, that's fine. I don't need your signatures. I'll push it through anyway. That's kind of the thing. Like, we're not really going to consider. Maybe I'm not making a bit of sense right now because I'm kind of worked up about this, which is really rare. I'm usually the logical kind of guy on this, but like I just don't like the way the wording is of this report. I just hate it. It
Right.
seems damaging. It's going to hurt rural Newfoundland greatly.
Yes, and that might be the strategy. Because they've been talking so much about resettlement and this and that and another thing, and the ways of, how do we say it? Rural Newfoundland is what Newfoundland and Labrador is. Stephenville in itself sometimes tries to pretend that it is a region, is a urban place, but we're like a hybrid. But if you look around us, we're very rural, to be quite honest.
There's quads going down the road in summer.
Exactly. And this worries me because the other section that I was trying to find here of what these regional bodies would be able to do is provide some services such as land use planning, economic development, emergency planning, and bylaw enforcement to all communities in the region. So you're taking away a municipality's structure to figure out how to use their land.
And also, like I said, none of this is natural. It's not going to be a natural change brought about on the ground level, on a local level. This is top down This is like a top down thing. This is the government saying you have to do it like this.
Right.
Like, I don't know who came up with 25 regions. Like why does it have to be
probably
that
the same
number?
person who came up with St. George's Humber?
Oh God, that actually does make sense now. Probably. That listen, dude. Districts of like electoral districts. That's a whole other conversation, man. That's another episode in of itself. And the gerrymandering that goes on with it. But no, like I think that the government was very lazy, and this is pretty much the whole theme of my kind of opinion of this report. It's the government, literally everything in there is like, we haven't done our job properly on a provincial level. So instead of really admitting that we messed up, we're going to kind of pass the buck onto you guys, and we're going to leave you to do whatever it is you're doing, and that way, the blame deflect is taken off us and placed onto you. Like in terms of the change, the failing demographics, our population is declining. It's shrinking rapidly, and that is not the municipality's fault. The municipalities have very limited powers based on the very outdated Municipalities Act of 1999, not 29, not 2009, not 2019, but 1999. We're using antiquated legislation to govern our communities. So why wouldn't it makes sense, I should say, that our communities are suffering.
Right.
We're old fashioned, we're antiquated, and it shows. And that's like, listen, culturally that's kind of quaint and adorable, but in terms of a governing structure and economic developments and that's a horrible thing. Like joint councils. Why do the joint councils have so little ability to enact regional kind of planning? There's nothing in there. All the government has to say is, okay, through the changes in the Municipalities Act 1999, we will allow the joint councils to have this power and that power, and
Right.
they can do economic planning. There's a bunch of joint councils. Only two of them, I think, don't meet regularly. So that leaves everyone else. They meet, and the government should just say, "Listen, here are your new powers. Use them wisely. Work on the Humber Mount on the Humber Valley. Do some development there. Get Marble Mountain weirdly somehow functional. I don't think that'll ever happen, but a guy can dream. And things like that, like the joint councils. I remember our old representative on the joint council was Mike Tobin. And God rest him, and he met with them quite a lot. And the joint council, I think, if they were given further powers, we would be spared the need to go through this what's going to be very expensive for everyone involved regionalization plan. We are, maybe I'm a bit rambling here on this episode. I'm sorry. I'm just really worked up about this. And actually the funny thing is, me and Lenny were sitting down at our usual spot on Sunday, and we had quite the talk about this kind of thing, well, mostly around economic development. But I mean, that plays such a critical role in everything else. But what I'm trying to say is, if we just tried updating the damn legislature,
Right.
or the legislation, I should say, then we could say, okay, this has not worked. Now we can move on to the next step, which would be kind of enacting a more, something more resembling this kind of regionalization plan or strategy. Or the government needs to look inward and say, listen, why is it that rural Newfoundland is dying? Why is it that everything outside of the Avalon region is kind of shrinking?
Right.
It's like that meme with Principal Skinner. It's like, am I the one who's out of touch? And it's, no, it is the children who are out of touch. That's the Newfoundland government. They're not taking the blame. They can't accept the responsibility that they bear for the way rural Newfoundland has declined. Everything is urban. That's what the government wants. They want everyone condensed into urban groups because it's easier to manage, but at the same time, it just ruins the rural identity of Newfoundland and Labrador, and that's something I can't support it.
Right, and I kind of laugh on page 8 of the report, if anyone bothers to read it. It talks about the expectations of what residents expect from their municipal government, and then it says, in addition, the legislative and regulatory environment in which municipal governments operate have become much more complex and demanding. Many simply do not have the administrative, financial, and or technical capacity to comply with legislative requirements, such as financial reporting, bylaw enforcement, federal waste, water, effluent regulations, workplace health and safety regulations, drinking water and water system, wastewater system requirements. So, in a nutshell, what they said is, as a provincial and federal government, we have fucked over current municipalities who were operating before we put impossible feats on these folks.
Yeah.
So basically what they said is, we're sorry for all the red tape and the extra shit you have to do, but it's your fault.
Yep.
So if that's
And-
the case, we don't need God damn it, we don't need an extra layer of fucking government.
No, we really don't. But they're going to give it to us.
That should be the name of this episode. God damn it, we don't need an extra layer of fucking government.
I actually want to just call it passing the buck.
Yes.
That would have been the best. That would have been a good, because that's all this is. This is a giant lesson in passing the buck. Because, like, listen, it says right at the bottom of page 8, a legislative review of municipal administration in the province is currently underway.
Right.
It is anticipated that the new legislation will be enabling for municipal governments to act on ever evolving issues raised by residents. But why? Okay, well, do that first. Do this first. They've been doing it actually. Actually, you know what? They've been talking about changing the legislation since at least 2017. 6 years ago. 6 years ago, or more, almost more than 5 years ago. They've been talking. And that's all our government does. That's all the House of Assembly does is talk, 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 and talk. And meanwhile, the problems are there. They're growing ever present. And like I said, the meme is there. It's, am I the one who's causing the problems? No, it is the municipalities. They're causing all the problems because they don't have the tools to handle the changes that we placed on them because of antiquated legislation that comes from 2 decades ago. Almost another era. I mean, it was the diamond jubilee it was almost the diamond jubilee of Queen Elizabeth when they last had this, or whatever the last milestone of her reign was. And here we are. They're literally blaming the communities. They're blaming the people. It's our fault that the government didn't recognize the problem and actually deal with it. Now, to be fair, the government only meets like 6 weeks a year or something like that. I don't know. They don't meet that much, to be honest with you. Which I think, like you as town councillor and people as in these other legislative positions or in these municipal positions, you meet more than our provincial government does. Maybe we should actually make the politicians work more than 4 or 5 months out of the year. Maybe then they would actually have the time to enact the changes that need to be done or to speak about them or debate them, because it's no good to say that we're going to be implementing this plan over 3 years when for the last 6 years the changes to the Municipalities Act of 1999, I have to keep saying that because I have to reinforce how antiquated this legislation is it's just not there. It's just they haven't done it. So we're going to do in 3 years what they haven't been able to do for the last 6. Really, like that makes no sense to me. There's so many simple solutions to this. Empower the LSDs, eliminate DUIAs and replace them with an LSD, or go to these areas, sit down with people and say, listen, you're getting amalgamated, whether you or incorporated, whether you like it or not. I'm sorry, but think this is the reason why. Here are the expenses.
Right.
This is the problem. It's unsustainable. Deal. So you guys have 6 months to go and figure this out. And if you don't, we will implement a structure. And if nobody wants a job, we will send someone in and they will do the job. It's the biggest thing I can say, Lenny. I'm sorry to talk so much in this episode, but the government is just pussyfooting around the issue. They're trying to do it in a way that is neutral and inoffensive, but also makes it look like they're trying to get things done. They're not. They're too scared to actually take a firm step. I hate to say this because I hate this man. We have never seen a decisive government since Danny Williams.
It's true.
We really haven't. Everyone just pussyfoots around the issues and dances. Danny Williams, as much as I dislike him and as much as I dislike the things that he brought to Newfoundland afterwards, the delusion that we were a half province, which is debatable sometimes, but I have to say that. He was decisive. He said, "You know what? I'm jacking up the fees for services. What are you going to do about it? Nothing." And people complained and people whined, but you know what? The service fees stayed high. I give him that. He was decisive. And that's what Newfoundland needs in this situation. But first of all, it needs to update the damn legislation. Why do I keep saying legislature? I don't know tonight. It's just that kind of night for me. I'm just so worked up because you know me, I'm an independent person. I like doing my own thing. And the one thing I really hate is the government coming down on me and saying, listen, because of our actions, you're forced to deal with the consequences. So you're losing your autonomy. Your property taxes are going up. Everything is going to be increased for you. The services may or may not be improved. We don't know really. We really don't know if the services will be better with increased revenue. It's debatable, and just because somebody does a study does not mean it's going to work. And they talk about other successful models, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, but this is not Nova Scotia. This is not New Brunswick. We do not have we might have vaguely similar cultures, but we're not the same. We march to the beat of our own drum. We do things differently in Newfoundland and Labrador. We go to McDonald's in a side-by-side. We don't do things conventionally, man.
Right.
So what might be a success in New Brunswick is probably not going to be a success in Newfoundland because it's a different culture. It's a different lifestyle. It's a different. They have a different form of approach to government. Newfoundlanders are generally, weirdly enough, they're very libertarian in that regard. They'd like to be left alone, and I can see this flopping. So, yeah, I'll let you talk for a minute here. I'm getting worked up.
Well, yeah. I'll just touch on what you talked about. I mean, we've seen. Oh boy. Some places would actually say Western waste management is a good thing.
Yeah.
But not many.
Nope.
I don't think that is the thought in Stephenville. Most I've heard of garbage collection in Stephenville is it's complex, it's complicated, it's expensive, and it just doesn't work. And the thought was, well, we're going to take this off of the places who can't afford it, and we're going to make a regional board, buy a building, do it up, hire this person, that person, this person, that person. And we're going to have a board, and we're going to have elected officials on that board. A disclaimer, I'm actually running an election. I don't know how it works, but I'm running an election to be on this board, by the way. So that'll be fun if I win that. But I hope I win so I can bring these thoughts to the table that instead of looking and having a hard conversation with the LSDs and the municipalities who cannot afford garbage collection, say, listen, the boys next door are doing it. Either pay a fee with them or join them, and this fixes your problem, makes it go away. Instead, they said, yeah, so if we tell you that you should join here, you're never going to vote for me, so we're just going to spend more of your money, make it look like we're doing you a favor, and it's going to be more expensive, but you're not going to care because you're not going to think about it. Because if you can't afford something, what do? You get rid of it. So
Yep.
it talks about the municipalities have trouble meeting legislative requirements. Where is there a spot next to them? Example, Kippens, Steve Mill. Kippens has had lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of issues over the years.
Yep.
Their residents have zero interest in joining Steve Mill, even though 99% of them work in Steve Mill.
Yep.
Something like that, once there is so many issues, that if this new council out there in the next 4 years can't turn it around, they should just be like, okay, you're losing your incorporated status, you are now part of Steve. And obviously it's more complex than that. But that's the conversations that need to happen. Not let's create another layer of government. 500,000 people in Newfoundland and Labrador, we're going to have fucking 3 layers of government. There's only 3 layers of government in a country of 32 million people. But for 520,000 fucking people, we're going to have 3 layers of government.
Yep.
What kind of sense is that?
Maddening.
Like
I've
said on this podcast before, and I've said it during elections, I've said it everywhere. I am a fan of regionalization. I would love to see the regional municipality of Bay St. George one day. Because we're very close together in scope. After living in Fort Mac and seeing how they can make it work, yes, it has its challenges, there's no doubt, but you have challenges now as well. You'll have new challenges, but it can work just as good, if not better, if we are all together as one. If we're all together as one, there is no second layer of government. It is your regional municipality of Bay St. George, your provincial government, your federal government. Jesus, that's a lot more simple than fucking 3 layers of government in Newfoundland and Labrador plus the federal government. Fuck it. Why don't we make an Atlantic Canada government while we're on top?
Boy, listen here, don't give them the idea. They probably would do that to you, true. They'd like that. No more of the damn Newfies bumming money off Ottawa for random stuff. You know, it would just go to, I don't know, Halifax, and then they would dole it out to us. And we'd be damn grateful because we wouldn't even be our own like separate kind of region. We'd just be a part of Cape Breton. We'd just be like elongated. We would just be like elongated Cape Breton. That's all we would be considered to the Nova Scotian government.
That's right.
But I mean, like, if you look at the numbers, New Brunswick wants to put in, let me see, they're restructuring its local governance system to result in 78 municipalities and 12 LSDs for 748,000 people. You know, they're also having 12 regional service commissions. So that's kind of one thing. But the thing that I find here curious that they mention is every property owner in New Brunswick pays municipal or provincial taxes and pay both for secondary properties.
Right. So now you're creating another issue.
Is the government going to look at these other places and say, you know what, we want a piece of that property tax pie? You know, so maybe if the regionalization doesn't go the way the government wants it to, or people are resistant, they'll say, you know what, if you don't want to move out of your UIA or your LSD, guess what? The province is going to charge you a property tax, and we're not setting it at the mill rate. We're going to set it at whatever it is we believe it to be fair. You know, that's another thing. You know, it's the layers of government, which are, of course, are absolutely unnecessary. By the way, you mentioned Kippens. I'm sorry to kind of be all over the place. This is just a really good topic. And like talking about Kippens and making them part of Stephenville, can you imagine the cost of having to standardize the waste management system, like in terms of like water treatment, I should say, water treatment and sewer in Kippens, because Kippens does not have a a sewage system like Stevensville does. You know, it doesn't have that kind of sewage network. It has septic.
Hmm.
Like, can you imagine the cost to bring Kippens, to bring Knowles Pond, to bring Cold Brook, or bring any of these other areas within standards of our legislative of our um, water and sewer systems? Can you
Hmm.
imagine the extreme expense? I mean, for God's sakes, to put that one particular fellow who had that water and sewer problem debate, not going to say any names, of course, but that was estimated at over, I believe, $1 million
Hmm.
just for him. So can you imagine bringing Kippens and Cold Brook and Knowles Pond up to the standard of Stephenville?
That's
Holy
right.
crap, we'd be broke. Like like you wouldn't be able to get it done. So the other issue here, Lenny, is not just the taxation issue. It's standardization of services and of resources.
Hmm.
Or I should say standardization of services. Because I mean, if we're gonna like, you're gonna have to standardize the sewage systems and the water treatment systems. That's going to be a lot more money than the province is probably willing and able to pay out.
But with that said, you'd get money federally, provincially, and you'd have to pay a portion as a town.
You
The
you
money that
would,
they're going to spend on doing this could go to that.
to an
And
extent, yes, but we really have to get the costs. I'd have to see those numbers. I have to see the proposed expense of that, because listen, the federal government can't even get proper water treatment on indigenous reservations.
no,
How the hell do you think they're gonna?
it's not that they can't, it's that they don't have the political determination to do so.
True enough.
Because they
True enough.
could very, very easily could do that tomorrow. They don't
Yeah,
have the political will to say this is going to cost $1 billion to get this done, and we're doing it because it's the right thing to do, because they're afraid they
that's
will
true.
lose.
That's
In
very,
Newfoundland and
very true.
Labrador, when Stephenville upgraded its water sewage treatment facility to be up to standard, which now pays dividends in terms of carbon credits,
Yep,
it costs a lot of money.
it did. It did.
But we're on that system, and it benefits us.
Oh my God, yes, our water's great.
Yes, we would have to take a loan. Yes, the town would have to go into debt. We'll call it, for this sake of the argument, we'll call it the municipality would go into a deficit to make this happen. But this doesn't happen all overnight. It would have to be a phased approach.
Oh God, yes, yes.
So you're building buildings in Kippens, in Knowles Pond, in Cold Brook to manage these different structures, to manage and facilitate all this stuff. But you're also gaining the tax benefit back. And maybe at that point, maybe you go to a meter system. I don't know. Right now, we charge a flat rate for water and sewer in Stevensville. If we grow
Yeah.
to that size, do we stay at a flat rate or do we have a meter rate?
And that is, now that ties into what I was saying in the beginning and the kind of the preamble. Like, is this, I don't know how I feel about that, because I mean, you have a lot, especially let's just say, for example, Stephenville.
Mm-hmm.
Stephenville has an elderly population. It's a fixed income population. So these standardizations are they will pay dividends eventually, but in the short term, people are going to have trouble in terms of getting kind of keeping up with the increased tax costs. Because these things have to get money from somewhere, and this town of Stephenville, while it is pretty good fiscally, for the most part, that sometimes we may be able to debate that, but for the most part, we are a financially viable community. But that standardization, even with provincial and federal assistance, is going to hurt, and it's going to hurt for years. I mean, we only got the wastewater treatment and chlorination system that was started under C. Stein. We
That's
only
right.
got that paid off. I think it was when Tom O'Brien was in his last like year or two
Yes.
of his mayorship. That, and I mean, that was a good couple of years. I think that was what, like 10 or 15 years
Yes.
of. So I mean, can our residents who, Stephenville has seen economic decline. Sad to say, it breaks my heart. But can we, with our fixed incomes, the higher costs of living, can we really cope with the change, with the added expense that comes with the regionalization? That's the other question here, and we can't. I can't say yes to it. I can only say yes if the provincial government puts conditions in place, puts policies in place to make things a little bit affordable on a provincial scale for residents. In terms of, for example, say the HST, through a few other things here, so that we have more of our money and we can put a little bit more of that towards local level, financing local level government.
Right.
That's my opinion on this. Like the next episode, I'm gonna try to be a little more level headed. This has just got my passions up. Um, Remember when were you with me when we went to that regionalization meeting? That were you at the regionalization meeting a few years ago? And it was a former mayor of Kippens and a former mayor of St. George's
Yes.
at it, and
And the
some
days
people
in,
walked out.
they
Yep.
never even got, the presenters never even got through their introduction. And half of the room got up and left. And some of them, in their capacity afterwards, had to call these folks and ask them to come back, because when they went to report back to their council, they had nothing to say.
It was a bit of a cluster, that one, man. That was a huge cluster.
It was
But
nuts.
it was nuts. I remember it so vividly. I remember them getting up. I remember them launching into that kind of spiel. It was very angry. It was very passionate. Certain individuals have been, I'm not, like I said, we can't say any names. And if you're in the area, you probably know who I'm talking about. Was on the radio a few days ago talking about the provisions of service, which is something we really have to talk about next in the follow up to this, because um, there are things here that mention, healthcare, attracting residents, achieving, what was it, age-friendly communities. I mean, we can't really do that in Stephenville unless we make the courthouse more accessible. It's kind of that. That's that. So I mean, that's on the provincial government. That's a government building.
That's right.
The town of Stephenville can only do so much. And like I said, folks, we're just using the town of Stephenville as our example because it's our municipality. We know all about it. We're both people with many years of volunteer service and activities within the town. Lenny on several things. Myself, involved with religious and other kind of town led organizations. And so we have an in-depth knowledge of things going on in our area and how things may or may not work. But it's been a very passionate kind of talk tonight. Is there anything you kind of want to say there, Lenny?
Yeah, I'll just bring up, because we're right in the middle of the section, that one of their cases, one of their selling points, is kind of mind-boggling. I mean, the stats are the stats, and they're good, but to use this as a selling point, to think that a regional government is going to fix this problem, is laughable. And it says many municipalities are unable to comply with budgetary and other financial reporting requirements, or in violation of the federal wastewater effluent regulations, are unable to fully comply with the drinking water systems regulations. This is likely due to a large number of small municipalities with varying levels of administrative and financial capacity. Then it goes on about, in October of 2021, there were 210 boil order advisories, Newfoundland and Labrador, affecting 171 communities. This equates to 13.19% of the population serviced by public water systems supplies. Of the 210, this is interesting. Of the 210 boil order advisories, 104 were LSDs, 106 were municipalities. And 92.89% of boil order advisories are in place for non-microbiological reasons, such as operational problems, no disinfection system, chlorine issues, or broken systems. The majority of boil order advisories are for systems servicing 500 people or less, or unknown populations. I mean, it's no surprise we've had trouble in Stephen. This is the most waterline breakages I've seen in years since moving home in 2017.
Oh my God, yes.
But I think that was, I would like to say it was more of a lack of maintenance issue and the fact that our town is really fucking old.
Yep.
This year will be 70 years of incorporation for Stephenville.
Ooh.
70 years. A very unique place. Bayside, downtown. Both very, very old structures of town.
Yep.
So I don't know how a regional government is going to fix that problem. Probably make it worse.
It probably would, and I mean, like you're right there, especially in the case of Stephenville, the infrastructure, on both sides. I mean, except for, say, for example, Area 13 and certain other kind of places there where the infrastructure is relatively young. I don't remember a time ever, and I grew up on base. I grew up on Texas Drive, like that kind of area near the cinema.
Mm-hmm.
Or I should say the Harmon Theater. I've been in Alberta too long, calling it the cinema. But up by the Harmon Theater and that. And I remember a time when I have ever seen that road get torn up and the piping or anything like that kind of replaced or changed. I don't remember it.
I know.
And I lived there for about 14 years, man. I never saw it. The only time I saw anything get fixed was on my own street, which I'm not going to mention on the show, but Lenny knows where I live, of course. And that was only recently they put that up there. They put the piping in there, and that was to accommodate new developments that were being built. But other than that, they never bothered to update my street. For God's sakes, we only finally got some sidewalks. And even then, the sidewalk's only halfway up the street, which, I mean, is a very Stephenville kind of a thing, in my opinion. We like doing things by halves. But that's actually, that's more of a Newfoundland thing, I should say, than anything. We like doing things by half measures. But no, the infrastructure is old. The town is not putting the money in, or the town doesn't have the money to put into so many upgrades because they are costly, and it's not just a financial kind of cost. It's delays for people trying to go to work. It's delays for people, doing other activities and things like that. I mean, you have to change your plans. I remember when they shut the road down on my street. It added about 4 or 5 minutes to my commute, which, I mean, not a lot, but for some people, you got to get your kids to school, and then you got to go and get ready for work and this and that. That 5 minutes might have made a bit of a difference to them. Like there's all these kinds of impacts about it. And what the government needs to look at here is, okay, if these communities do not have proper drinking water, that's kind of a priority for us, because that's an economic issue. That's a health issue. Primarily, it's a health issue, and a sick population is a unproductive population, and
That's right.
that's not acceptable. So the government should say, okay, if the municipalities do not have the resources to do this, we will step in in the short term, aid them in making sure that their water supply is drinkable. And then, in order to prevent this from happening again, we can work individually with these areas, with these communities and these LSDs to see what we can do to make sure that your income levels are enough to do basic maintenance on these facilities, on these services to make them work. That's what they have to do. And instead of just like you said, slapping another label or layer of government on it. We're not spelling things, we're not pronouncing things properly tonight. We're just so worked up. It's like that flex tape guy. He slaps the tape on it and he says, that's you know what I mean? He says,
Problem
that's a lot of
solved.
damage. And yeah, problem solved. Smacks a bit of flex tape on it, or whatever kind of tape it was. Don't sue us. But I mean, he slapped the tape on it and everything looks good. And probably about a week later, the whole thing, like the tape falls off, water all over the floor. That's our problem. That's our government. They're taking the tape and they're slapping it on and they're saying, look, that's regionalization. That's going to work. And a few weeks later, it's going to fall off and everything's gone to shit. See, I'm so worked up. I'm even swearing, and I said I wouldn't be swearing on the show. So, folks, I'm sorry. I'm usually the non-swearing one, but I'm worked up about it. It's a contentious topic, and it's more contentious when the government is pretty much throwing this at us and not really inviting us, inviting our municipalities, inviting our elected officials out and saying, listen, what do you need to make this work? What do you feel is the steps forward for you? They didn't need to go and form these working groups. They could have just asked the towns. They could have asked the towns to prepare their opinions, meet with municipal affairs, and you know what? And say, listen, would you be willing to consider regionalization? And if they say, well, not like this, okay, well, how can we make regionalization more attractive for you? How can we get you to create this naturally instead of us having to create an arbitrary number of regions, which may or may not properly provide services that you wish them to provide? Or I should say the efficient provision of services. That's probably the better way to say it. Like that's the thing here. We could get an MHA on or something to kind of discuss these things. That would be so much better too, or invite someone from MNL. I think that would be a wonderful conversation, something we should probably look at. But there needs to be more response from the municipal officials, the communities that actually can get people to run out there and talking about this. I mean, this should be created by them. It should not be, the government should only facilitate the conversation, not be the ones to create it. That's what I'm trying to say.
That is correct, sir. I agree 100%. This is the same thing that was presented, well, sort of presented a number of years ago at that regionalization meeting we were at. This looks a little bit different, but roughly the same thing about creating another level of government for no damn good reason. Excuse me. Do you have any closing thoughts, Ernest?
No. I'm gonna save the rest of my fiery and controversial opinions for the next episode. I'm gonna try to be a little more coherent with them. It's just that this was such a unique kind of discussion. It is a bit passionate. So, bear with us. The next one, we're gonna make sure that our points are a little more precise, or at least I will. I mean, I know Lenny always does, because Lenny always comes out with fantastic opinions on this. That's why I love doing the show with him. It's in our, we're having so much fun doing it lately. I also want to take the time to plug our previous episode that we did with former Liberal cabinet minister, Dale Kirby. You guys, if you haven't watched it, watch it. It's a great conversation. There is a lot of swearing, not from us, which is very rare. I think it's one of the few episodes where neither one of us actually do much swearing, but the guest does. So it was fun. It's probably one of my favorite episodes now. But look it up, and please, if you like our content, show it to your friends, show it to your family. We're trying to grow the platform. We're hoping to hopefully in the future, do some fundraising that so we can buy probably some better equipment, pay to kind of expand our reach. Because we started this off as two dudes having fun, but we see the value in it, and we see our channel, we see our reach growing, and it's really fun. It's really exciting. So just if you like us, help us grow, and we will be forever in your debt. And also please ask your MHAs to talk about your concerns with regionalization. That's very important. You need to get the conversation going, and because otherwise it's not really going to work properly, and it will work in a way that's going to hurt you rather than help you. Lenny, is there anything else you want to say?
No, you pretty much summed it up. Just remember that this is your province, Newfoundland, Labrador, and your voice matters. Ernest, thank you for another great episode.
Anytime.
As Janice Fitzgerald says, hold fast, Newfoundland and Labrador. We're almost out of level 5. Alert level 3.
Level 5. Crossed.
Level 5 in terms of this is now pronounced the 5th wave of the COVID-19, whatever fuck the last 2 years have been shit show. But anyway, that's a good way to end this show. So on behalf of the In the Trenches podcast, myself, Lane Teller, and Ernest Snooks, we'll say goodnight, Newfoundland, Labrador. Be safe out there. Until we see you again next week, take care.
Take care.